Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir.
But I'm gonna start off somewhere else. So with Savannah State.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Welcome to another episode. Mike, man, you missed 250, man. We just climbed into 251. What's going on? How's it going, Mike?
250, man. I missed that. I'm sorry, brother. Sorry. I'm gonna play catch up. I'm gonna
no problem. No problem.
I'm gonna be this. I'm gonna be this natural disruptive force. Be this natural
this
disruptive
is Dr.
force.
Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, Mike the Disruptive Force, aka Professor Washington, Professor Bishop. How's it going today?
Doing well, Doc. Doing well. Getting geared up for Jackson State spring game this weekend. So get an opportunity to catch a little bit of the sight sounds of everything that is Jackson State football. Get a little tailgate in. Mike, you know about the tailgating, right?
Oh yeah, I know about the you got a little something. I can't say nothing.
you know, Mike, that tailgate connoisseur. He just
tailgate connoisseur.
Yeah, he goes around, judges people's tailgate, get all in. I don't know how he gets around to make sure he gets some of that food though. He just has a magic way of making sure to be like, hey, you want to share this? He's like,
it's all right. I'm a foodie, baby. Oh,
yeah,
man.
you're a foodie. So welcome to episode 251 of Inside HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU all things HBCU sports from institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, multi-famer, and literally just got inducted this past Saturday in Dallas to the Texas State Black Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Got his purple jacket and everything.
Ralph
so cool.
Ralph Cooper.
Still looking sharp out there, Cooper. I see you with the jacket on. You wear it well. As they say,
yes,
well. We owe you a beverage of your choice. We'll put it hey, we'll make sure you get that. And
now, he know if he with me, he know if he with me, it's got to be one beverage, one shot, something.
Say, man, you telling the people too much. You telling the people too much. They already heard about the tailgate. Now you go tell them about the other side. Some of us have a reputation of hold out. I ain't gonna say no names, but that one over there with that red shirt on JSU, he you know what he trying to uphold. Never mind.
Hear no evil, see no evil.
Exactly. So, Professor Bishop, you say you getting ready to get down there? Oh man, it's nice. This the big weekend?
It's Blue and White week this week of Jackson State. They're celebrating all things spring sports, but you get a little taste of football this week, and then you get a little bit more of a taste on the 24th of April.
I remember those days when they actually kind of put that out there in Prairie View. We'd have these spring mixes, and you'd have all these spring contests going on with the track and field, softball and baseball, and you'd have these multiple weeks of events, man. It really brightened up the yard and had a lot of folks find a way to make a trip. So kudos to Ashley Robbins as he figures out to continue to take providing that athletic touch he does to the next level. And right now he's shining bright. Most recently named Athletic Director of the Year, FCS level. So kudos to him. He finds a way to get it done, boy. I tell you, Jackson State.
AD of the Year.
Yeah, can you believe that? Man, I need to go check who was voting on that. I need to talk.
That's when you know you can have a pimp stroll, when you have AD of the Year. And you have like that swag championship and AD of the Year. You can have a pimp stroll officially with that.
Yeah, multiple SWAC championships. You know, he gonna call us in Texas if we don't get it right.
This is true.
With that, let's get in here and shout out to some of the listeners out here, man. They've been blessing us. So I want to shout them out before we go to y'all and get you some updates and news, because we're gonna give some news in this first segment. Second segment, we're gonna take a deeper dive and just talk about this past weekend. It was pretty live in a lot of different ways. This is Dr. Bill with Inside HBCU Sports Lab. And as we were saying before those nasty storms got a hold of us, first of all, you all that are in Georgia, particularly Atlanta area, make sure you all stay safe. We'll still bring you this HBCU hot and heavy. Want to shout out for all those as we getting going. Franklin Nelson, A.D. Drew is in the house. Wendell Davis, as we said, Ricky Burton. But with that, let me go to you, Charles. What's some news of the day?
It was pretty big news today, and I think this was significant. Notre Dame football to host a HBCU for the first time ever, as Notre Dame will be taking on Tennessee State in Notre Dame Stadium in 2023. The game between the two historic college football programs is set for September 2nd, 2023. It was announced today. And this is a statement from James E. Rohr, who's University Vice President and Director of Athletics, Jack Squabbert. We're excited to bring a pair of great academic institutions that are steeped in tradition together in 2023. So kudos, Tennessee State, University of Notre Dame. They will be getting together on the football field.
You know, I don't know why you do that. Talking about kudos. I don't get excited about these Power 5 matchups. I don't know why y'all just get all excited. Shit, they wouldn't play you 50 years ago when you could have busted their head. But that's beside the point. They got all the money now. They buy you out and send you down there. Now, there's a couple of things I will say. I hope the revenue that they use for the program goes back and not just balances the budget, that at least part of it is used to invest into the football program to help build up the program. In a lot of places that's done. So that is part of it, and I can see that going on. But I just don't get excited about these matchups. I think there's other ways the athletic directors can generate revenue. I think this is a quick fix. Certainly understand that to some degree the framework of such rich traditions between the programs, but they're such in different dispositions in terms of the financial situation. So yeah, I don't know. I'll go back and forth in terms of just reporting the news as you did, but there's something about it that just doesn't rub me right in a lot of ways. But kudos to Tennessee State.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Washington, what do you got? What are your thoughts in terms of some news that you want to get out there?
Yeah, I echo your thoughts. I don't get excited about those games. Some would argue that it's about exposure, but if you lose a certain way, how much exposure, what kind of exposure are you seeing? I'd also echo that, your thoughts that hopefully they would use those funds to kind of reinvest back into the institute if you're going to play those kind of games. But I just think there's a more creative way to bring revenue back into the school. Having said that, less than a month after, finishing one of the best, I guess, seasons in decades, Savannah State was faced with the task of having to find a new head coach. So Sean Quinn, leader of Savannah State, they had a huge record. Unfortunately, they didn't make it to the championship, had a great rate. So now where are we at? 4 or 5 months later, where are we at? Well, the new leader for the Savannah State football team, who has interned for 4 NFL teams and coached over 30 all-conference players, is none other than Mr. Aaron Kelton. So he is the 27th head football coach, director of athletics, according to director of athletics, Opayo Marshariki, who announced that today. So Mr. Kelton arrived on campus this morning to meet with the team. He has said, if you look at some of the social media posts, that his number one priority will be recruiting. There were also questions as to why it took so long. Maybe it's the layover between, fall and spring. There are a number of reasons given out, but, congratulations to Mr. Kelton as the new head coach for Savannah State. They only have more of an upswing. They had a tremendous year. There are high expectations for them going into the 2022 fall season.
To your point, it's a good idea that he understands need to recruit, because you have this program out there called Albany State right in his backyard.
Albany
East Division. Albany, and that's not to mention Tuskegee. Miles doesn't look to take too far a step back with the talent they've been, the success they have over the years. So yeah, the SIAC is deep, and in terms of just overall Division II football, you still got the big beast up there in the north called Bowie State Bulldogs. Yeah, I know they lost their defensive coordinator, but they still got the head coach right now. At least as far as we know, Portland State hadn't made a decision yet, so it seems like they're safe, but we don't know how that will go. Before we get too far outside of this football, I did want to spend a little bit of basketball. Obviously, you had the historic HBCU All-Star Basketball Classic in New Orleans doing the same thing, same time as the Final Four weekend on the men's side that was there in New Orleans. So before we get in that, maybe get some of your thoughts in terms of that game and how it played. I did get a chance to watch it that Sunday. Man, in terms of the intensity, you don't see that in the All-Star. At least in the NBA, you see it in the fourth quarter when they actually are trying to win. But they had it the whole game. They were pulling it out. Obviously, you had a little bit of the turnovers, but, when you have people that hadn't played together, you can understand that. But it wasn't a lack of effort. So, man, it was fantastic there. I would like to get your thoughts on that. But I'm also want to bring up this article by Luke Williams, Black College Sports page, which HBCU Hoops and NAIA Basketball History, Part 1 and 2. Obviously, the desegregation of the NAIA was before the NCAA. And so there's a lot of rich history with the HBCUs associated with that in the basketball championships. But before we get in that history, I will take a step back and ask you your thoughts on the All-Star weekend. I'll stay with you, Mike. What are your thoughts in New Orleans about the All-Star basketball game and event? Shout out to HBCU Sports as they were talking about the fact that there needs to be a women's game added to the lineup. Top three things gave good credit in terms of what was going on there, but one thing that they talked about is potentially adding the women's side. But just in general about the game that was played this weekend, what were your thoughts on what took place in New Orleans?
Well, I mean, it may seem cliche, like the fact that, there was, an early focus on J.R. Smith, as well as the former NBA player. And I like the fact that they did, give him his shine. And they also, I think, did give some love to this kid basketball coach, Kenny Anderson. So I like that. Hats off to CBS. I also like that it gave shine to all kinds of players. So I think who was named, who was MVP? Was it Taj Green?
From Benedict College. Yep.
From Benedict, not something in the SWAC of the MEAC. So they also mentioned Bryson Green from Texas Southern. He had his shine. Hampton's Najee Garvin also got shine. A lot of players got shine. So whether they go to the G League, they go overseas, I thought that was good. It gave all players shine from different genres of HBCUs over the landscape of HBCUs, so those were my takeaways as I watched it. I was excited. There was high scoring. You mentioned the turnovers, but what all-star game where there's hype and excitement do you not have turnovers, as you mentioned, with folks who were excited and hadn't played together, probably hadn't practiced much together. So I thought it was well done. And I thought the coverage was, I can't get over the coverage and shine for HBCU athletes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, it was first class in a lot of ways in terms of They got the gear. You could tell they were excited about being there, and they got to go to the game, all kinds of things. They had luminaries come in. Magic Johnson was there, as well as others. So when you saw the backside in terms of what was on Instagram, you really got a good understanding of just how thorough they were in supporting the team. So, and the players, I should say, as well as the coaches. What are your thoughts, Charles?
Yeah, I thought you all hit on all the key points. And one of the things I took notice of was Avery Johnson doing the color for the game. I thought that was huge because a lot of times when you have these HBCU games, HBCU events, the broadcasting team, quite honestly, they aren't as versed in HBCU culture, HBCU lore, but I thought CBS did a great job in terms of highlighting those things, highlighting, like Mike mentioned, J.R. Smith, highlighting Kenny Anderson as well. And they did a great job, I think, of featuring the players and where they're from. So, but I think to your point, Doc, I was surprised the intensity of the contest. Like you said, normally you see all-star games and it's kind of a dunk fest, and it's kind of, for lack of better words, like YMCA basketball, where it's just pick up and run. But, they were running sets in this game, and the first thing that jumped out at me were the coaches were like out on the court, like coaching and running plays and stuff of that nature. So the intensity was there. I thought by any measure, it was a successful inaugural HBCU All-Star class, and look forward to it growing even more.
Yeah, no doubt. I look seeing if I can open up my schedule to get out to one of the events, specifically if it travels with the with the Final Four, which is in Houston next year. So certainly if that's the case, it'll be easier for me to make the rounds and get that done. Thought it was interesting because usually you see MEAC, CIAA, SIEC, and SWAC, and they kind of switch it up a little bit. I thought it was pretty cool too, where you have MEAC in terms of SIEC, SWAC, CIAA. So I thought that was unique to see that framework. So kudos again to all involved in making that happen.
I did
want to give some love.
I think one thing, Dr. Cavil, the naming of the teams, I thought that was symbolic as well.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought normally, John Clendon, Big House Gaines. So those are legends, and I like the fact that they acknowledge them by naming both teams after those true legends.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed that out. That was a tremendous point when you did that. Did want to make sure I go back to the HBCU Hoops NAIA basketball history, part 1 and 2. It's a 2-part series. One was released last week. The other one was released this week. Literally today, you can go to Onnidan, www.onnidan.com, and check out Luke Williams' Black College Sports page where he has a history lesson. He talks about HBCU hoops, NAIA basketball history, part 1 and 2, as I said, how HBCU dominance in the NAIA paved the way for the, he says integration, again, I like to say desegregation of NCAA and the dominance today of African-American Black athletes at the major college basketball, including this week's Final Four. One of the things he points out here is the fact that during that period of time, HBCUs literally played in 20 championship games, taking home 12 of them. That was from 1956 to 1980, essentially over the time period. I like to cross-reference. So you go to 1980, a lot of people remember Virginia Union, obviously, when they won the Division II championship. At the same time, in the NAIA, you had Alabama State with a runner-up. 1967, so when the Winston-Salem State NCAA Division II NCAA championship is at the Division II level. A year following that, in 1968, you go back to the NAIA. You have Central State of Ohio winning the NAIA program to kind of give you a mix. Because if you look at the NAIA, obviously a lot of dominance, but you mix in that NCAA Division II, you really see that obviously 1989, North Carolina Central, as they win the Division II. This is after the heels you see in West Virginia in 1987. Play for a national championship. They lose to Washburn. Obviously, the last NAIA championship, 1977, right here with Texas Southern University, with Coach Bob Morley getting it done, winning 71-74. It's always fascinating when you look at the fact the first HBCU to play for a championship is Texas Southern University in 1956 in basketball. They lose to McNeese State, who also beats Tennessee A&I in terms of that run. Just fascinating history when you talk about that. So if you get a chance, go and check out Luke Williams' Black College Sports page. You can go to onandon.com again and look in Black College Sports and see it up there. We'll put a link in the drop down to make sure you get that information. But I thought it's kind of context to kind of share that as we close up on basketball in terms of what's going on there. You talked about Savannah State hire on the athletic director. You see changes here. Elizabeth City State names interim athletic director. James M. DeBose Jr. has been named University's interim athletic director. Go to you all. I'll stay with you, Charles. Any thoughts in terms of just the churning? We talk about churning with coaches, but you got the churning on the athletic director side, which is also always fascinating to me. Any thoughts either on this hire or just in general in terms of the churning of ADs as well?
I mean, that is one of the things that we've looked at over the past 2 or 3 years, the training of ADs as well as training of coaches. But we've talked about it. It's a new crop of very savvy, business-minded ADs that are taking over some of these programs, and we're starting to see sort of this metamorphosis, if you will, in terms of more business-minded thinking, if you will, in athletic administration.
Any thoughts you want to share, Mike?
I think CB kind of hit it. He said a couple of words that stand out: new crop, business savvy. Those words stand out to me, and I think you're seeing another example of those types of minds that are coming into those positions. And, it's kind of ironic that from a timing standpoint, they're all being kind of named around the same time. They're all kind of infiltrating, but they are kind of changing the requirements of the position.
Yeah.
And what it requires to make it not only the opposite, but that program successful. So totally agree with what CB said.
Good points. You got any baseball players of the week that you want to get up there, Charles?
I didn't have a baseball players that we pulled up, but I did want to send kudos to Texas Southern's Ocean Soul. They performed at WrestleMania 38 this past weekend, and they, performed a theme song to WWE wrestler Bianca Belair at WrestleMania 38. And of course, if anybody who's wrestling fans know, it's millions of folks watching WrestleMania. So huge opportunity for the Ocean Soul to be out in front of the public and have that brand in front of quite a few new eyes. And of course, Southern University Human Jukebox. They performed not only at the HBCU All-Star game, but also at the National Championship game. So kudos to both of those band programs.
Yeah, good point. And when you talk about the bands getting showcased and getting some time, both in terms of Sunday at the HBCU All-Star game there, and then again during the halftime of the Final Four, the championship game to be exact. And then the wrestling, I thought it was interesting to see how that WrestleMania kind of came into fruition, is seeing how Texas Southern performed in Fort Worth during the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Which is really what galvanized the WrestleMania folks to actually make that call and get it done. Or they did well in terms of what takes place there. I will give a quick MEAC softball update. Give some shout out to Julia Garcia has been named MEAC softball player of the week, co-rookie of the week. Meanwhile, North Carolina Central freshman Jaden Davis, co-rookie of the week for North Carolina Central, as well as Ashanti Eubanks is the pitcher of the week in terms of Maryland Eastern Shore, as they moved to the upper part of the conference, making a stance there in baseball. When you talk about the honors there for the MEAC, you have Norfolk State redshirt junior outfielder Deontay Brown, Coppin State sophomore outfielder pitcher Jordan Hamburg were selected as the MEAC baseball co-players of the week. Coppin State infielder Josh Hankins was also named rookie of the week, while Delaware State sophomore Evan Harris earned pitcher of the week for the honors. And like I said, we'll get into the second half and dig a little deeper in there, and we'll get you some updates on the SWAC in terms of honors of the week as that stuff comes out. With that, let's go ahead and take our second break of the show, I should say. As we come back in the second half, we'll get into some baseball matchups this past weekend and give you our thoughts in terms of what's churning on baseball. Touch on the records for softball as well, just to give you some updates there. Stick with us. We'll be right back. After this break, we'll get into the second half of the show.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. high quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisine.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We're getting into the second half of the show. Before we get in that seventh inning stretch, let's get into this baseball. I'm gonna start with softball, at least give you some updates. And then I want to get your thoughts in terms of what took place more in terms of the SWAC. Some of these baseball games were played this weekend. East Division, Jackson State, softball, solid, 8-4, 17-15 overall on a 3-game win streak, meaning they swept. Alabama State is right behind them at 7-5, Bethune-Cookman at 6-5, Valley 5-6, and Alabama A&M FAMU holding on at 4-7. You go to the West. Texas Southern starts to push out a little more, stretch it. They're at 10-2, 13-15 overall. They did lose the last game of the 3-game set. Right behind them is Prairie View, 8-4, where they took 2 out of 3 from Prairie View. So right now, obviously, they have the head-to-head matchup behind them. It's Southern at 7-5, Alcorn is 6-6, 500 on the year. Grambling State at 4-8, Arkansas Pine Bluff for 2-10. So you see what's going on in the softball world there. Key matchups coming up this weekend as we'll keep you updated on softball. Let me give you the updates on baseball because it's getting interesting. Alabama State, 7-2, tied with Bethune-Cookman. Yes, that tough loss to Valley, where Valley played them tough and got a game there at home, which you just hadn't heard for a while from Valley. So has tied things up at the top of the standings of the East right now. Both Alabama State, Bethune-Cookman sitting at 7-2. Alabama State swept their series this weekend as they go win 3 straight, as you know, with 3-game series. FAMU sitting in third place at 5-3, 11-17 overall. They took 2 out of 3 of those games. Mississippi Valley said 3-6. They did lose the last 2 games as they had won that first game over Bethune-Cookman, surprising a lot of people. Alabama A&M, 3-6, lost 4 straight games going back to the midweek game. And then you have Jackson State struggling, surprising everybody. At 1-8, they did get swept in their series. You just hadn't seen that in a long time for Jackson State. Maybe it's just one of those years. We go into the West and we thought, well, maybe that's the same type of thing you see from Southern. No, they dropped and sweep Texas Southern, including a big come from behind win on Saturday to win that game 10-9 as they were trailing. 9-7 late in that inning, but they find a way to get it done, which means they bring out the broom, which puts Prairie View, Grambling State, and Southern in a three-way tie at the top. Prairie View has won 4 straight after they let Alcorn get a game, or I shouldn't say let, Alcorn got it done. Grambling State and Southern, which means Texas Southern goes from first last weekend to sitting in the 4th spot. Or I guess when you look at where they are, Arkansas Pine Bluff is 3-6. They've lost 5 straight. They're struggling now after starting off pretty strong. And Alcorn State is at 1-8, lost 3 as they get swept in their series to Grambling. So that's just a little bit of baseball. What matchups are really turning your head, Charles? What's going on in your mind in terms of the baseball in the SWAC?
I think the big one this weekend for me was Southern with the sweep of Texas Southern. We talked about Texas Southern going into that weekend series being dominant from an offensive standpoint, one of the best hitting teams in the SWAC, being able to steal as many bases as they've done. But for Southern, kind of limping coming into that series, for them to get the sweep, I thought that was huge. And then, I think you touched on it. I think the one that keeps turning my head is Alabama State. I thought they were a better team than Jackson State, but they swept them. So that's now Jackson State has not won a series now in the SWAC. It's been a rough year. I know they've had some injuries and things of that nature, but for Jackson State baseball to be in the cellar of the SWAC East, completely surprising.
Yep. Although you have Gabe Vasquez leading Texas Southern in the batting at 424, couldn't quite get enough, as well as Jeremy Gaines sitting at 393. It wasn't enough to get it done in terms of Southern, as they just found a way to get the brooms out. I was really surprised that they took all 3 of them. Not that they didn't necessarily win the series at home. Mike, what are your thoughts on what are some of the games that are catching your eyes in baseball in the SWAC this past weekend?
Yeah, I echo what happened with Southern University. I was surprised, big time surprised. I didn't expect at all. I was flabbergasted. So to see that. So the other thing that stands out, I think you talked about with Jackson State. Each year we talk about who's the powerhouse in batting and slugging percentage. 9 times out of 10, it's Jackson State. That just ain't happening in the year our Lord 2022. Not sure what's happening with Jackson State. The other thing is pitching. Each year, the team that typically has the best ERA, team average, earned run average over the course of the season usually is the one that ends up in the end. And Alabama State a couple of weeks ago, they were at the bottom of the cellar. They're starting to peek their ugly head. And if you look at statistically wise, where they're back, now they're back at the top in terms of pitching. They're the only team with a team ERA of 4.76. Now that's not good. Typically, folks, you want one with you want a 3.0 or so or better. But their pitching is starting to look like times of old. So we'll see. What will be interesting is this Prairie View matchup with TSU coming up.
It's huge.
With TSU coming up, and I think Southern after that. So I think that West will start to wash itself out.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can tighten back up. It'll be interesting. And we'll get a chance to talk about some of the matchups this weekend. We'll do a little deeper dive on Thursday. But I wanted to stick what has transpired this weekend in terms of Jonathan Thomas and Justin Cooper, I should say, 36 and 24 stolen bases respectively, as well as Jeremy Gaines has jumped up to the 3rd spot with 18, as you see them continue to get it done on the base pads. Wasn't enough to turn it around. Some key games, midweek games you got done today. You already have Prairie View defeating Houston Tillotson 17-4. You have Florida Gators up 11-0 over FAMU in the bottom of the 5th. In terms of some early, you got Jacksonville, Alabama State. I'm really interested to see what that looks like. Alabama State has, along with Bethune-Cookman, has played well in their midweek games. So fascinating to see, can they get another one? We saw Texas Southern get a victory last week, as well as Bethune-Cookman a couple of weeks ago. Then you have Texas Southern and Lamar in the second inning scoreless in terms of that matchup. You got Grambling, late game at number 19 LSU, tough one there. And you have Jackson State facing off Lamont Owens, hosting them at home. Some matchups will be fascinating to kind of keep up there. Southern versus New Orleans, and you have Arkansas Pine Bluff with Little Rock What are your thoughts in terms of these midweek games? You have a mix with some Division I matchups there in terms of regional rivalries. You have the Power 5 matchups, and then you have a couple of NAIA matchups as well in there. Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of the scheduling framework of some of these midweek games?
The one you touched on, Alabama State, Jacksonville State. That's an intriguing one to me, taking a look at that. But kind of the rest of them, it's, trying to check and see what sort of arms that you have going midweek. But I think Alabama State and Jacksonville State, that's the one that intrigues me when you take a look at teams relatively on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Mike, I want to get your thoughts in terms of some of these midweek games, how you have different scheduling philosophy. Some of it's based on location. Some of it is based on what do you want to do in terms of your pitching arms and your depth, how you prepare yourself on the weekend, and those kind of things. What are your thoughts in terms of these matchups you see today, tomorrow, as well as throughout the year in terms of these midweek games?
Yeah, so that Alabama State game is definitely one that intrigues me. Are they going to put Breon Pooler, the number one pitcher in the SWAC, on the mound? He's got an ERA of 1.64. Do you put him on the mound? They have other pitchers that are in the top 10, or do you start to really exercise that bench or that depth pool? And typically, these midweek games are an opportunity to test the strength of your bench in terms of pitching. So I wonder if some teams will take that opportunity. So, for instance, you also have, Prairie View before their stint with TSU, who do they have? They have Houston Tillotson. So, will they take the opportunity to kind of test the strength of their bench? Because once you get to the tournament play, it's really depth of pitching bench and rotation that really gets you through the playoffs. So I think a lot of times, then they have McNeese State, a team that's playing, fairly decent as well. So the other thing is there is no team in the SWAC right now that is batting over 300, team batting average. Will they have an opportunity to kind of reinvigorate the bats? Because the offensive output for the SWAC, to be honest, compared to years past, is a little bit lower. Do they take these midweek opportunities to say, okay, let's get our bats back in order. Let's see what we can do. So a lot of questions that come to the fray.
Another question that I have in terms of some of these midweek opportunities is, and we talk about this a lot, is I don't see the midweek opportunities for these large school teams playing some of these ranked small school teams. I mean, when you take a look in terms of proximity, you got Albany State, you got Miles College in there, you got Talladega, you got Tuskegee, Florida Memorial, Xavier, Southern playing a Xavier, Grambling playing a Xavier. It'll be fascinating to kind of see a midweek game where it's like here's a good baseball program versus another good baseball programs that are perennially ranked in a black college now.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder when they look at like strength of schedule, you like the two teams who are evenly matched. I agree with that. And I don't always see that if you look at some of these matchups.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating question when you talk about the Black College Nines. As you said, you shout out to Savannah State. They took Miles, which is a solid program. They took them to the woodshed this past weekend. Savannah State, one of those top 25 teams. Xavier is playing some really good ball. And you look at the Black College Nines, you see those teams at the top of those rankings to talk about it. And they are regionally in the area. So I wonder, is that purposeful of some of these coaches not playing these teams? Or is that something that's just been a scheduling oddity that hasn't taken place? But those are some things that I'm thinking. Before we get into the top of the hour, I did want to ask a final question in terms of the SWAC, looking at that. We're basically a quarter of the way through the season, right? We played half of the 6 games you'll play for the first half of your baseball season, and then obviously you flip the schedule and either go on the road or you come home against your divisional opponents. Are you starting to see anything, or is it still too early for you to phase it out? I'm going to start with you in terms of you, Charles, in terms of the East Division and West Division. Either one of them starting to see things that give you pause or give you consideration of what direction things are going, or is it still too early for you, Charles?
I think Alabama State, Bethune-Cookman, and FAMU have separated themselves in the SWAC East, but in the SWAC West, I think it's a toss-up week in, week out. When you take a look at the teams over there in the West, Prairie View's playing tremendous ball. They won 4 in a row, huge sweep over UAPB. You got Southern, big sweep over Texas Southern. Texas Southern, one of the best hitting teams in HBCU baseball, and stolen base leaders. And then you have a UAPB team that did take a game from Texas Southern. So I think things are still kind of working themselves out over in the SWAC West, but I think over in the East, you have those teams, they've separated themselves out a little bit.
To you, Mike, a similar question, are you starting to see any frameworks that really give you pause? What's interesting is Professor Bishop alluded to in terms of the East. You have 3 teams that seem to really separate yourself, but remember, you take top 4 teams of the East Division, top 8 teams. So that 4th spot seems to be a big race between Valley and Alabama A&M early on. But in the West, maybe it looks like you have the 4 teams, with Pine Bluff maybe a puncher's chance to try to figure out if they can find a way to get in that 4th spot. But it looks like right now, between Prairie View, Grambling, Southern, Texas Southern, as we may have imagined, look to have it locked up in terms of the West, but now they're just fighting for seeding. What are your thoughts? Is it just too early for that, or is that the early indication of what you think will hold true through the rest of the season?
I think it's the latter. I think I agree with CB. I think Alabama State, Bethune, and FAM have kind of started to kind of separate themselves. That's not evidenced just by head-to-head play. If you look at statistical categories, who's starting to separate themselves in terms of pitching and hitting. Remember when we talked about this, I will keep reiterating this, when Bethune and FAM came to, the SWAC, we said, what's this going to do for the scales of baseball in the East? Who's going to be the top 3 or 4? We expected that to be Alabama State, Jackson State, Bethune, and FAM. 3 of those horses are still in the race and have separated themselves. There's one of those horses that's kind of fell off the race. The West is kind of looking like basketball season. There's any parity. Any team can beat any team. Just because Prairie View, I think they had a good stint against UAPB, they still got to play Southern and Texas Southern. And those teams are really, the parity between just those 3 teams. And don't count UAPB out. They could come back and sneak back and get one. So I don't think the West is settled by any stretch of the imagination. It's too early to tell for the West. But the East, you're starting to see the 3.
But to your point, it was fascinating to see Prairie View go on the road to sweep Pine Bluff. I never would have thought that had happened. So, it'll be fascinating this week to see that matchup as Prairie View hosts Texas Southern again. We'll talk a little bit about that specific and some other matchups coming up this weekend as we start to churning the final. We'll pick that up this Thursday. Let's take our last break, and we'll get into the top of the and look a little bit of the MEAC and Tennessee State as well at softball for Hampton and North Carolina A&T. Not a lot to talk about those teams because they're struggling a little bit, but we'll talk about it. And so we'll come back, give Charles a minute to give an update, and then we'll get back into it. So as we get into that 7th inning stretch, take a break. We'll be right back after this break, and we'll get into that 9th inning to see Charles want to go to the bullpen.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go, why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High-quality cigars plus personal customer service with Slow Burn. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. It's more than a mobile lounge. It's an environment and an experience rich in history, luxury, and personality. An elegant extension of any celebration occasion. It's the perfect escape and meeting place, a space where you can relax or enjoy a shared passion. Have Slow Burn plan your next big event or before you are planning to celebrate your win over your athletic rival. You can shop our collections at www.slowburnwaco.com.
But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Charles, I know we had to get into the break, but I know you wanted one thought that you wanted to make sure you got out of there specifically about the West Division that has you excited thus far.
I want to follow up on that point that Mike was making about the parity of SWAC West. When you take a look at the top hitting teams, the top 4 teams are all out of SWAC West. Texas Southern batting 318, Prairie View 292, Arkansas Pine Bluff 288, and Grambling at 285. And then you kind of flip that. The top pitching team in the SWAC is Alabama State. So it kind of comes back to that age-old question: does good pitching beat good hitting, or vice versa? So normally when we get into a tournament situation, you gotta have those arms. So.
And if I let me correct my own data point, I said there is no team. There is one team has a team batting average over 300, and that's Texas Southern. So I stand corrected on that one. But that's just recently. So if you track it week to week, so thanks for bringing that out, CB. But there is one team that has a team batting average of 300. Usually, you see about 4 or 5 at this point in the season.
Yeah.
Well, let's get in here and get into the MEAC. Let's start with some softball. We'll do the Independents as well. Independents are struggling, so we'll just give an update there and leave it at that. In terms of the Independents, Big South for Hampton, North Carolina, they are 9th and 10th place of 10 teams. Hampton is doing a little better than North Carolina A&T, not much. It will be interesting to see that head-to-head matchup there, I guess. Conference-wise, Hampton is 3-9, just 13-23, 3 straight losses. North Carolina A&T is 2-10, 12-21 overall, 3 straight losses as well, struggling there. Tennessee State in the OBC, 10 softball teams, they sit at the 9th spot, 2-9, 11-23, and they have lost 6 straight. So, independent program struggling a little bit. Let's get into the MEAC in terms. You saw the accolades in terms of the Players of the Week. Maryland Eastern Shore 8-1. The Hawks are getting it done. They've swept their last opponent as they got in there. Norfolk State is in a 3-way tie with Morgan State, North Carolina Central right behind them, all at 6-3. Yeah, Howard at 5-3 as well. Then you have coming in and holding at the bottom of the conference, South Carolina State and Delaware State sitting at 2-7. Coppin State is struggling for the year. They're 0-8, but unfortunately they're 0-26, obviously, on the season. Softball thought process, you see Maryland Eastern Shore. I think they're really doing solid. It'll be interesting to see if they can hold it down as they seem to be making a statement. Let's get into some of the baseball and ask your expertise of what's going on here. Obviously, the lone baseball team, independent-wise, in North Carolina A&T, just not having a good season, at least in the conference race. A little better when they play at home in terms of being right around the 500 mark. But of the 11 Big South teams, they sit in 11th place, have not won a conference game. They sit in 0-6, 3 straight losses, 10-17. And while you see the football team, many people think they're going to a stronger conference in terms of the Colonial Athletic Association. The Big South is probably a stronger baseball conference than CAA. So maybe that will help them in terms of they can move for baseball, figuring out a way to get it done. But in terms of the baseball for the MEAC, you have your 4 teams there. It's tight. Surprising, though, you have Coppin State sitting at the top, 7-5. And guess who's at the bottom? Norfolk State.
Norfolk State.
Yep. They won it last year in terms of the tournament at the bottom, and they were sitting in 2nd place. So they really struggled as they lost 2 of the 4 games. They're playing 4-game series in the MEAC. Coppin State sits at 7-5. Won their last game there. Delaware State and Maryland Eastern Shore sitting at 6-6. Norfolk State is 5-7 behind them, but it's only a 2-game lead difference. So while they flip and go to the bottom, it's really bunched up and tight. I'll start with you, Mike Washington, in terms of the MEAC. Any thoughts in there? And obviously, you can say anything about North Carolina A&T if you have some thoughts in terms of how they're struggling in the Big South.
The one thing I will say about North Carolina A&T, I'm surprised that they're this much in the cellar. When they were in the MEAC, we were talking about pitching. They had the top pitching for 3-4 years straight.
Yeah.
ERAs, low threes. They had top batting average. I'm really surprised that the performance has sunk down. Is it a function of the conference? Has there been a slump off in recruiting? I haven't put my hands on it. I don't know where the data points lie.
And this is a team that didn't play baseball last year. It's coming out of COVID, as you're talking about. Obviously, that happened in football. So I wondered how much of that layoff affected them. You saw that a little bit with Bethune-Cookman, at least in football and to some degree in basketball. It looks like they're overcoming it, but obviously they had more time. Also, as they had the whole fall in terms of softball and baseball, and then you had the churning with the coaches. But I wonder how much is that COVID layoff.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I want
exactly.
to get your thoughts on that, Mike, and then I'll ask you, Charles, to give thoughts on both. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to, this Maryland Eastern Shore team, they got some stud. They got Tatum Kelsey, Julia Garcia. They've got others. They got Kelsey Elstrom, Nola Montaigne, all in the top 15 or so and batting average, and they are putting up 305. Heck, Tatum Kelsey is not even a player of the week. She got a slugging percentage that's close to 1 million. So this Maryland Eastern Shore is for real, and they are really kind of separating themselves from the rest of the MEAC. So if you don't have a chance, you need to pay attention to this Maryland Eastern Shore. You some softball teams that kind of separate, but this Maryland Eastern Shore, they are doing it.
Charles, your thoughts? Softball, baseball, MEAC, independence, any direction you want to go? And I do want to get your thoughts specifically on the COVID year off, how that may be affecting A&T overall, other than track. Obviously, track and field indoor, they haven't lost a step, literally, in terms of what they're able to do and what we saw in Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah, let me start there with A&T. I mean, this is completely surprising to see them in the cellar of the Big South. And I, too, wondered how much of it was because of the COVID layoff, which, to me, the question becomes, when you have a layoff like that of a program, how much does it affect the timing with regards to baseball? Because you talk about all the time, guys got to get their swings in, to kick count, protect that time and things of that nature. That's why when guys go on the IR, it takes a second or two for them to kind of get back in the swing of things. So you wonder how much of how detrimental it was to the A&T baseball program that they had that layoff like that. I can't make heads or tails of what's going on in the MEAC there. So we talk about parity in the SWAC West. That's real parity. 4-game series and everybody is bunched right around each other. When you take a look at Coppin State, Delaware State, Maryland Eastern Shore, kudos to Maryland Eastern Shore. Huge comeback, 12-inning win over Coppin State this past weekend. But those teams are all bunched right there together, and it's a little bit surprising to see Norfolk State on the inverse end. Normally we see them up at the top of the MEAC standings, but kudos to Coppin State for what they've done thus far. 76 record. Everybody right there with those 6 losses. Coppin State was able to get ahead of the curve a little bit this past weekend.
Giving some more love to the SIAC. Karen Griffin shouting out Tuskegee. Again, we talked about the baseball program at Savannah State, what they're getting done over there. Shout out to Tuskegee as well. Reggie Austin talking about CIAA in the house. Shout out to Willie Alexine representing. He gives a shout out. Congratulations to Mike. I want to say this over here. I saw that you told him thank you. Son's assist record, both for a single game and recently for the team, for the season thus far. Shout out to what, as we call him, Mike, little Mike. I know he don't like that, but I can do that. Uncle Mike, Uncle Yada, I can do whatever. Lacrosse, shout out, man. He ain't playing little. He playing big time over there, getting it done on lacrosse. Shout out. Willie Alexine, as I said, gives you shout out. G Boom Holly says he'll be on the hill on Friday taking pictures of the baseball game between Prairie View A&M and ECSU. That's Texas Southern for those that don't know this area down here. So just wanted to give a little shout out there as we get it done. That'll do it for us today. Thank you for listening to Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. Hope you enjoyed the show. Breakdown of the latest news, breakdown of softball, baseball for the season. And we'll mix in a little bit because next week the polls will coming up, Black College 9. So check that out. Voting, they should be released later to this evening or tomorrow. So we'll get a chance maybe on Thursday to give you some updates of how we voted in the poll. We want to see how everybody else comes together in the overall vote. I can tell you how I voted. So it'll be fascinating to see what that looks like. Who's at the top? Texas Southern was previous there, but hard to get swept and remain at the top. We'll see what other folks think. Again, I want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday right here at 6 o'clock. We look forward to next week. And Thursday, as we discuss the latest news of the lab, follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That's Dr. KENYATTHCAVIL. Again, that's Dr. KENYATTHCAVIL. Follow Charles, the pregame show, as they give you some insights of what's going on this weekend. They'll be live in the color. The first time they kind of bring you back from a football perspective, you know, they gave you some insights in terms of basketball season, particular men's and women's, especially for the women's. They give you all the way the trip into the NCAA tournament. So you saw some updates there. Keep a look on them. And then obviously Brian and AD, as they do it every Sunday and Wednesday, guys, as they give you updates. O&G, giving you some insights on FAMU in terms of what's going on down that way. But download my JBN, my BCSN. Go to check us out, my JBN, in terms of YouTube. Make sure you get that done. Again, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles.
Of course.
Mike.
Lecture.
Dismiss.